hello there. Welcome to the Nth Degree. Hey there, Donna.
Hi there, Bralynn. Hello to our audience. Thanks for tuning in. We're going to talk with you today. We're going to encourage you today.
We'll encourage you because it's May and we're still not supposed to be frustrated.
That's right. It's May, and the word of the prophet says, "Do not let May frustrate you." So here we are, still in May. We're approaching Pentecost, and in the U.S., we're approaching Memorial Day, and so we're almost halfway through the year. Not quite yet, but
yep. And we're into season 2 for Nth Degree. You guys, if you missed the last episode of season 1, our producer Rex really did a great job. Did you see it, Donna? Did you see he edited with all of the fanfare and the that was so cool. He's so good. You're such a blessing, Rex. We appreciate you.
Yes, we do. So today our topic is you do it.
Let's set it up a little bit.
Okay.
So this weekend, you and I were both kind of feeling a little bit like, something is off.
Well, especially yesterday.
Trying to get grounded again and trying to get connected to the Lord again. And one of the things that I do sometimes to do that is to go back into my journals and see what the Lord had shown me. And I had an ulterior motive as well, because I'm speaking so many times in June and I wanted to go back and see, because I used to be really smart,
And that's what we were talking about. How sometimes when you go back and read your journals, you're like, man, I was smart then.
Right. This was an awesome download. I should teach this sometime. Like, oh yeah, I did teach it in quantum capacity, wherever like, oh yeah, that's right. But when you read it with fresh eyes, Donna, isn't it just like, wow.
Yeah. So that brings up the whole topic of journaling.
Right.
Period. Full stop right there. Journaling is important. We hope you're doing that. If you're not doing that, we encourage you to start. If you think, oh my gosh, one more thing to do. I get you, girl. I get you, guy. I get that feeling.
Yeah, well,
but let me take the burden off of you for a minute and remind you that you have the ability to journal when and how you want to, even if it's bullets. And you don't have to journal the everyday stuff. Mostly your devices are going to have the everyday stuff already for you, like your calendar or other things like that. But what you want to capture is your spiritual aha moments, or a question arrives to your spirit, or a question arrives to you, and where you're pursuing a thought. You heard a thing or you saw a thing and it bumped you into a moment. That is the thing you want to journal, because I think God uses that. Dreams are another thing you want to journal. If not every dream you need to journal, but there's some dreams you have them, and all of a sudden you're like, I should probably put that down on paper somewhere.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And even yesterday, it's like this one entry right here was all of yesterday. And then I just started today right here. Like, so yesterday, all I got from journaling, and it's important, feel your words in your body. And I'm like, okay, that's important. Let's at least write that down. I didn't get anything else.
That's so good. That's so good.
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to be more authentic and trying not to say things that don't really matter.
Or they don't vibrate within you to a deep area.
Yeah. Or maybe they're not the full truth, or they're just so flippant or irrelevant that they don't need to be said. Or maybe they're just positioning myself in pride of I need to be right, and so therefore I'm going to say this. And it's just like some things don't need to be said. So let's feel what we say in our body. So that's what that was saying to me. But I didn't write all of that down. I didn't write out the whole teaching. I just wrote like this.
And I think that is a good encouragement to the audience. If you're journaling, just write what you're going to remember. Oh yeah, I had that thought. It may take you a minute to kind of get the fullness of it back, but it's in there.
That's how I do with dreams too sometimes.
Mm-hmm. I find that I think in terms of t-shirt. What do you t-shirt? Yeah. Okay, out there. Nobody copied my idea. No. Please copy my idea. It's fine. I'll get it out.
Don't make money for the kingdom.
Right. Please do. But I think in terms, especially, this is what I do. This is kind of self-revealing, but I'll be listening to a speaker or a YouTube or a Rumble or something like that, and something will be said, and I'll pause, and the only thing I'll write down in somewhere, and sometimes I'm like, where did I put my notebook? Where did I put my journal? I have to go dive for it. And is I'll put it in the form, what they said, the thought I want to remember is I'll put it in the form of what would look good on a t-shirt. Like what snappy thing about that, catchy thing about
Tweetable.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that. Tweetable would be another one.
Yeah.
Or a billboard, if you put that on a billboard, someone's going to go, huh? But you seeing it on a billboard can go, oh yeah, I remember when I had that thought. But the whole purpose of today and our recording this is to talk about going back into your journals, into the places you've written things down, and reading them, walking through them again. And is this good for us? Is this healthy? Is this worthwhile making time for?
Yeah. And just being a teacher, I have all of these little tags and everything, and my different colors mean things. And if I got a couple on the top, then it really means something. But I can notice when I'm going through things in my life, and the thoughts and the way that I processed things. And usually it's a thank the Lord I'm not where I was kind of a moment.
It lends itself to Thanksgiving. You see one's own maturation. We're all here for maturation. We're all here to grow these cycles of gaining the understanding of the character of God and accomplishing the love angle of what we're here to do.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And then also just remember, it's like David, when he went back and he goes, I killed the lion and I killed the bear, I can kill this giant too, right? So when you look back at what God's done in your life or brought you through, and even if in the moment you didn't see God's hand or you didn't feel it, you're where you are now because you got through that. You didn't die, right? So when you look back and you can read some of those dark moments and you're like, oh, wow, I in hindsight, I can see what the Lord was doing. Or maybe you can't, and you can say, why did I have to go through this? What were you trying to teach me? And then it can be a new teaching moment for you. And that at that time.
It's really good. And it's really, I think journals are a form of self-awareness.
Oh, I totally agree. You're absolutely right.
The other thing that I'm famous for saying is slow down, pause long enough to hear God. Pause, just pause, put some pause in your day.
You're right.
And the pause is such a healthy place to be, but you can pause over a journal entry. You can pause. Like the other day, I realized 3 days had gone by and I hadn't written anything in my journal. And I'm like, that's interesting. Maybe I've been on a 3-day, what, Lord, what exactly was that?
For me, if I don't write in my journal, it's either a rebellion or a meh.
A meh. Yeah, right. Come on, admit it. We all have those meh. Meh. Meh.
Yeah.
Just in the meh. But the meh is okay. It is part of life. We all do go through the meh. And if you think that Bralynn and I aren't going through our own meh, you're wrong.
Hashtag so far from perfect.
Human, right? So, but then there's some times where you'll go back in your journals and you'll find something that is so stellar. And you're like, I know that came out of the heart of God. I know that came out of either the heart of love or the wisdom of God, the knowledge and counsel of God. And to recall what you were going through at the time, to me, this is personal opinion, but to me, we remember those things so that the person that we might run into that's going through that will have an exhortation and an encouragement to them.
Good.
Maybe not to teach them because God is teaching them, but maybe to say, well, here's what I learned when I went through that, or
Right. The word
Have
of
you thought about this? Or I wonder if God's saying, leading you to a time of this or that,
it's good.
yeah. But
I
mostly
know.
I think,
I know sometimes when I go back and I reread the original download that maybe I've told people about, but
yeah,
I go back and reread the original and I'm like, wow, when I'm feeling it in my body as I'm reading it, there's so much more there that I have not conveyed to
I
people.
know, right? And you
Yeah.
recall the nuances of something.
Mhm,
Oh,
mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Especially if the Lord, I write in my journal if I'm having a snotty moment or like, oh, tears, or crying out, or I write really big, like, what the heck, Lord, or whatever. I
Or
can
for me,
tell.
it's like I'm looking for the right color of pen.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, exactly. So in those moments, like that only comes off the same way to you. Like I can't teach that to someone else. I can tell you that I had a snotty cry when I was going through this, but that doesn't mean anything. When I read it and I'm like, oh wow, I see the tear stain where it spread the ink, and I'm like, oh wow, Lord, you were really doing a work here, weren't you? You know?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so healthy to go back and see where Papa's brought us through something,
Right.
that we're still alive, that we lived through it, and we're wiser, and we are maybe positioned to help others in their moment of that.
Absolutely.
Boy,
Isn't that Corinthians? I think it's Corinthians 1:4 or 4:1. I should know this, but again. Anyway, Paul says the comfort that we've been comforted with, we now comfort you.
yeah,
So it's
yeah. I
the
think that's why it's so important when Christians gather as a community to share testimony, and maybe that's what even our little Nth Degree thing is about too, sharing testimonies for other believers or other people who are pursuing thoughts about God and themselves, of things to think about. And um, it helps, doesn't it, to hear, and it helps when you gather your own self with your own older journals and you go back and you're gathering yourself to remember what God has done, to go, wow, I did go through that. I was a mess. I went through that. I'm sure glad I'm
right.
not to be a mess today. Or maybe you're still in a mess and you're like, well, I see this mess is still here. I wonder now if this is time to overcome this mess.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point. And I was also thinking about people who don't journal, that it seems like there's a piece of life lost because I don't remember everything that the Lord teaches me. I don't remember all of my dreams. Even when I go back and I read what I wrote, I'm like, I don't remember this dream at all. I'm so glad I wrote this down because nothing is coming back to me right now, you know? So it's like all of that, if you don't journal, all of that is lost. And that's a little sad for me. Maybe, it's just me. Maybe it's my opinion, maybe I have a melancholy bone, but there's something to journaling that preserves life, and it preserves who you are, or who, and the journey, because it's not about the destination, right? It's about the journey of getting to who he created you to be, and the becoming.
I
But
think I think some people use the journaling function at the end of their day. I wish I were this good to do this. I think highly of people that do this. But before they go to sleep at night, they'll sit down and they'll just journal out anything that they're still processing. And I'm like, wow, that's such a good habit to be in. I'm not in the habit. My journals
not a
usually
night journaler either.
are, yeah, mine are usually when I'm finally have a moment to pause, or I'm intentionally going, wow, I need to sit and pause. When I'm becoming aware of my spirit, soul, and body, and which part of me may need ministry. And how am I going to achieve that from my creator father? And that's when I'll usually have thoughts. Like yesterday, I realized I hadn't written in a while, and I was not really in a mood. I didn't feel I didn't feel spiritual. That's the easiest way to say it. But I just was like thinking about stuff, and I'm just going to write this down on here, and just writing it down. And then later I did read it, and I was like, I don't even like what I wrote, but it's okay. It was just where I was in the moment.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. Sometimes I envision someone going through my journals and reading what I wrote. I'm like, what are they going to think? But then I think,
Do not do that to
who's
yourself.
really going to be interested anyway? Please,
That would really shut down transparency, right?
Yeah, right. Exactly.
I figured nobody's going to take the time.
Yeah.
Into the dumpster it goes, which is fine. But if I'm not here and I'm there, I'm not worrying about it, right?
Right. Exactly. All as well. Yep. So I just keep carting them around. And for this size journal, it takes me, let's see. Oh, well, this one was a little bit longer. Usually it only takes me 4 or 5 months. This one was actually more like 7 months.
Yeah, I'm aware of noticing that too. I use the same notebook every time. And the reason I use this notebook is because I like this function. It has a pocket right there, so I can save some things that are germane to this time frame. And then I label them with the label maker on the front.
Oh, I see. I put my dates on the spine. Is that upside down? There you go. So that as they're stacked on my shelf, I can see what months this were. I forget though when things happened. And so
that's so true, don't we? We just do.
Yeah, it's like, did this happen before XYZ or after XYZ? And you in the moment, you're like, I am never going to forget this. This was a watershed moment that, who could forget this? And like, I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. I have to go back to my journal.
It's really interesting in light of the different cycles and seasons that a human finds themselves in, because as you're growing up, you have mile markers that you hit that other people are noting for you, like there's graduation kindergarten, or there's graduation from high school, or there's if you do college, or if you gain a skill, or if you went to a particular conference or a camp, or you rein in a specific relationship, and those are mile markers, I think, that are kind of natural. And then there's mile markers in the spirit realm. The reason I've been thinking about this lately is because I went back, I challenged myself. I wondered if I could write my own autobiography. And I was like, that is such a rando thought, right? Very random. And I'm like, I wonder if I could. So I just sat down with a Word document and started what I called my autobiography. And I burst out laughing like 3 paragraphs. I wrote 3 paragraphs, and then I went, I'm going to have to go research my own life, because I don't remember dates. I don't remember the names of towns and the places like that. And I'm like, my own history. What the heck? I can't. Is this important or not? It might be.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. The very first book, well, no, that's not the very first book. That's not true. The second book that I started writing, that's never going probably anywhere, was that.
Was not about your own story?
Try to write my own story, yeah. And I did get like 23 pages in.
Ooh, girlfriend.
But it was like, what does it mean? It was like this senseless.
Maybe it was just an exercise in reflection. And I think that a journaling exercise, especially going back to read your journals, that's an exercise in reflection.
Yeah, going back to read the journals is very much more interesting. And I actually kind of got lost in it a little bit over the weekend. I was only going to go back and find out when this thing happened, or what I taught during quantum capacity number 2. I've taught it 3 times. And I was just trying to remember who was in what group and what did I teach. But I got kind of just sucked into my journal and going, oh my gosh, this happened. And then that happened. And oh, that's Lord, you were speaking to me there. And oh, I went through that there. So it's really, I don't know. It was really intriguing, even though it was only me,
Like, oh yeah, totally. I totally understand that. I thought I just had was, I think do you think this is true? I think, or I wonder if people are mostly journaling negative things, and maybe the habit we should form is to journal the highlight things, the
Yeah.
robust things.
Actually, I was taught early on to journal gratitude, because that is a very fast shifting. I worked with a positive psychologist, and she said you could, in 8 days, if you just journal what you're happy about, what you did well, and what made you proud every night.
There's that end of day thing. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It could shift you.
Yeah. That's fascinating. I think maybe I laugh at myself, because maybe if I did more journaling at night, then I wouldn't lie awake at night processing half the day.
Oh,
I'd go to sleep faster.
that's true.
Uh-huh.
Well, let's do an experiment. Let's try it, Anna. Let's just try journaling at night, since neither one of us do it, and just see if nothing happens.
Yeah, we
Who
could.
wants to join us? Jump in the comments. Like, I'll journal.
Yeah.
I'll try it. We'll do an experiment. It's the journaling at night challenge for us morning journalers.
Yeah. For me, gosh, I think it takes such a mind shift of, it takes an intentionality to change your routine. Sometimes we're such routine creatures, and we don't.
Oh my gosh, yes.
But
I know I've talked to you about I'm going to just do a rabbit hole for a second, a routine thing. I know I've talked to you about this, Donna. I'm not sure I said this on the show, but it occurred to me after however many decades of brushing my teeth before I drink coffee. It doesn't work, right? And I know I talked to you about this. I'm like, trying to just switch the habit to not brush your teeth right away and drink coffee later, and then remember to brush your teeth again later. I still forget. And it's been almost a year now that I've been doing it. And I still what's wrong with this picture? And I'm like, I never brushed my teeth today.
So full self-disclosure here.
All right. Well,
but the first thing I think about when I wake up is I need to brush my teeth.
I know.
The second thing I do is go get my coffee.
I think about that too, because you're just feeling so I got the Zackleys, where your feet, it tastes exactly like the Russian army walked over barefoot. I'm like, I got the Zackleys and I want to get it out. But I just thought for the whitening effect, because you see what happens in the coffee pot and in your mug.
I know, right?
It just builds up. Well, it just makes sense to brush teeth after coffee. Can I get it straight?
And then there's those of us who like to sip it all day long. Oh no.
Oh yeah, no, that I guess you can tell those people by protein.
Okay. We're gonna climb out of this rabbit hole now.
Yeah. Okay, so back to journaling. I did have a question for you. Do you put thoughts, revelations, dreams, conference, if you're attending a conference or watching a podcast, do you put it all in the same journal, or do you have separate ones for?
I do put it all in the same journal, because I'm not smart enough to keep up with that many journals. But what I do, at some point I realized I needed some sort of a tracking system. So the first time this happened, actually, the Holy Spirit, I was doing something with my journals, probably moving them in a different closet or something. And I clearly heard Holy Spirit, this is several years ago, say, I want you to go through all your journals, and I want you to flag the dreams that you've had. Oh. And so I had a stack very, very tall of these spiral bound notebooks. And I'm like, that's going to require me to read every single journal. Okay. So I did, and I flagged it with one of these little kind of flags, these little.
Yep.
And I flagged it on the top, and I got bogged down because I would start falling into the journal, right? Reading it and all that. So that's when I made sure to start within my journal. I flag it for a dream, but for every other thing, I'll put at the top, especially if I'm listening to something on YouTube, or if I'm listening on Rumble, or at a conference, I'll, in the very top, I'll put the date. Oh, the date is so important, people. Do not forget to date your journal. I put the date, but I also put the day of the week. I learned that with some dream training. Someone was teaching me. I put such and such date, Thursday, Wednesday, whatever it is. And then I'll put who I'm listening to very briefly. And I have notations, so I don't have to write the whole thing out. You have abbreviations.
Mm-hmm.
And that has come in handy, because sometimes when you do go back, you're like, now who said that? Because I like to listen to people who said that.
Yep.
And that if they're sharing their revelation, I need to tell the person I'm sharing it with, hey, this didn't come to me. This is so-and-so.
Right.
And so I'll say, well, so-and-so said this, and I remember him saying this, or her saying this. And that way I'll have it. I'll have the name of the person that's on there. So I do note it, and I always note it in the same space on my journal at the very top. And that means I'll have to turn the page if I'm, or I'll draw a line and do it, but mostly I turn the page. Mm-hmm. So that when I do go back, I've got the dates and I've got the speaker that I was listening to.
Yeah, I do that too, especially for if I'm going to teach it, because it's like my research.
Right. If it's just revelation flow, and right, I'll write it in a different color.
Yeah. And I'll actually note, like if I'm watching a YouTube or a podcast or something, I'll note when, like at minute, 58 is when this happened, so that I can go back and watch it again and catch even more relevant.
Yeah. And I have you guys listening probably have friend groups too, that you're sharing links to things that you're hearing. And it's so great to get a friend group that'll send you the link, and they'll also say, go to minute 58.
In YouTube, you can, when you share it, you can select where to start to share it. Yeah. So you can put it where you want them to start and then share it that way, and it will automatically start at that minute.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I don't like to get sent things that's hours and hours of listening to. I'm like, oh dear, just tell me what the snippet was. If I get sucked in, and that's
I get sucked in too. But don't forget, you can increase the speed.
Oh, I always do that. I know the joke with Arthur Burke, I'm like, he can be on 2. He can be all the way double.
He's the only one I can listen to on 2. Bless him. I think he's good on 2. Right.
Brilliant. Yeah. And he creates long videos that have a lot of content in it. So if you're going to consume Arthur Burke, be prepared to, take some time, because it's very good.
His own method and his own
it's good
rhythm.
I'd like to get him back on the show, actually, to tell you the truth. He's doing some new stuff, but there's lots of people that I'd like to get back on Spirit Center business. But back to journaling though, the only thing that I pull out, I keep everything in the same journal, but the only thing that I pull out is, like, if I have a thought on, I need to handle this either for life or business, like, pay such and such, or, car registration due, or, fix my website, or, this little note. I have a separate smaller journal for that kind of, let's almost like a to-do list kind of a thing. And I do sometimes go back into that and go, what did I never do?
Yeah, I know, right?
What's still on the burner?
I did that on my phone device, my iPhone, and I was like, no, this is this distracts me more than forgetting would.
Yeah. And then the other thing that I have just recently, literally in April, pulled out was my seed sowing tithing journal. So I have a little book of that, so that I can assign every seed or everything that I sow or trade with. And then I, ask the Lord, if when something comes back in, show me what is what, so that I can tie things back to it. And so I leave a little space after each entry in that. And it's been good. And it's not as time consuming or distracting as I thought it would be. Because I just don't need to add more things to my life and complicate my life. But if I would have had that in my journal, which I do sometimes, like if I'm at a conference, I'm like, oh my gosh, traded for that revelation, right? And I write in there that I traded a big one for that, or whatever. I do have it written in my journal, but then I have no idea where it is, right? And so then when the harvest comes on that seed that I sow, I'm like, did that happen in 2022? did that happen? And like, what? I'm like, so in the journal, it's a little bit easier to find.
That's
Make
pretty
sense?
cool. Yeah. I have one stellar experience in my life where something was taken from me due to circumstances. This was a long time ago. And I was kind of new to understanding how Holy Spirit can speak to you and remind you of what you had been through and what you are going through now and how the two were related.
Mhm.
And so I had a circumstance, and something large that I had put a lot of money into was, removed from me, and not because of anything, it just was circumstances. And I remember praying, telling Father, I want this back. I'm marking this today that I want this back. And then 3.5 years later, maybe 5 years, I'd have to go look at my journal. um, it came back in a different way, and Holy Spirit reminded me. He told me, he said, "This is what this is." And
That's so
I
cool.
was just like, whoa, that's so powerful to mark something that you have lost or you've surrendered. And when I say that, is like you've surrendered it to the Lord. You're not going to let it, stop your spiritual growth. You're not going to let it cause unforgiveness in your life. You're not going to let it be the bump in the road that you fall out of just any relationship with God at all. Even
Right.
though it was a big thing. It was a big thing. But I marked it in the spirit with my verbal words. And my husband was a testimony. I remember he was in the room or the car when this happened. And then later, when all that started coming, it was rather miraculous. But I was like, why do I feel like I just got to do this thing? And I did it. And then later I hear Holy Spirit goes, this is the return. This is the harvest of what you released. And this is the return of what was stolen from you. And I'm just like, whoa, that's so very awesome.
So good. Yeah, we need to circle the airport now. We're going, yeah, it's about time to land. But there's another thought that I just had because you've said it twice now, and I think it's really brilliant, Donna. You said marking it, making a mile marker in the spirit. And isn't journaling almost all that? Either marking what you're thinking about, marking the download that you got, and however that came to you, it's all about really taking note and really cherishing those moments.
That's interesting that you picked up on that. I was using that because I do think in those terms. I think of in terms of what am I marking? What spiritual mile markers am I expecting? When did I know that I passed one? That kind of thing. But here's why I would say, because life is life, and there are going to be cycles and seasons that you go through where you feel that the voice of God to you has waned. You may be in that season now where it feels like brass is right here and that your prayers are hitting the ceiling, and yet you're persevering because you know the truth, and you can't see everything in the spirit realm that is against you as a child of God. You can begin to know those things. You can begin to perceive those things. And the Holy Spirit is working the whole time behind the scenes to help you come to some sort of understanding so that you can pray a certain way or do something or have an understanding. I love understanding from the Lord. That is my favorite, is that you get an understanding and you're like, oh, that connects that dot. Now I have understanding and I know how to, at least the next one step forward. But you will go through seasons like that. And people don't like to talk about this. People don't like to say, I'm in a moment of time where I'm not getting a lot of revelation at the moment. I don't know why. I can't explain it. There's nothing wrong with me. There's nothing wrong with God, but it is what it is. And so your journals are your highlight moments, or they're your proof of maturation, your proof of your own maturity with the Lord. And it's okay, but you may need that to stir your own spirit up, because there's times where we all need to do that. We need to remember the truth and stir our spirits up.
Yeah, that is so good. Well, hopefully, audience, we have, encouraged you to not only journal, but go back into your journals. And I would think that there's probably some sort of a regularity, at least like once a quarter, maybe. I don't know, maybe every 6 months, something or another. Like, do it not like once every 10 years. I'm just, because excuse me, you'll be pleasantly surprised. I always am, Donna. I always am just pleasantly surprised. I'm like, oh, wow, that happened. I totally forgot about that. Or the Lord showed me this, or whatever it is, So that's what our encouragement to you guys today.
Yep. So here's to journaling. See if you can answer our mini challenge about journaling in a different fashion, and let us know in the comments how that went.
Sounds good. Thank you for sharing with your friends. We appreciate you. Until next time, take it to the nth degree. Bye-bye.